In this week's program, we're visiting with upland game biologist RJ Gross, and we're going to talk about the wing envelope program for pheasants, grouse, and partridge, and why it's important for hunters after they harvest birds to send these envelopes in. I'm Mike Anderson with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department.
So the species that we're looking for the upland game hunters are pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, and Hungarian partridge, or gray partridge as sometimes people call them. Each one of them we need different parts from. Say like a pheasant, we need the outer primary of the wings, and when I say primary, the very far feathers, and a foot. If we don't have a foot, we can't tell if it's adult or juvenile. And again, what we're looking for, this is a way to track our population. Another way that we use, another metric, it kind of compares to our late season roadside count. We get a pretty good adult juvenile ratio from those, but this is really where that comes from. So what we can see, like for a pheasant, if we get a foot and we see that it's a juvenile, then we can look at the primary feathers, see how they're molting. An adult and a juvenile pheasant molt the same. So what we look for, they mold from the inside closest to their body out. The last one that's growing closest to the body is one we look at, and we can see how many weeks old that pheasant was at the time of the harvest. And we can backdate that to see when it was hatched. And that's how we figure out, peak hatch in North Dakota, things like that. And what we use that kind of data for is setting our seasons. You want to have a pheasant, you want to be able to harvest a pheasant that you can tell is a rooster, which is usually around that 15-week mark. So, you backdate 15 weeks from the opener that we have now is about where we have our peak hatch. It's a lot harder when you're harvesting younger pheasants, tougher to tell the difference between a hen and a rooster. And then also like conservation practices like haying, things like that. Obviously, so use a pheasant for example, they can't fly for the first 10 days of their life. After that, they can do those short flights, get away from things. So obviously at that time you shouldn't be haying, especially on like wildlife management areas, things like that. So we can use that for haying dates, like the August 1st, that a lot of is using on CRP and things like that. That comes from nest hatch data that other states have, and we've been doing this. We got 60 plus years of data with this. North Dakota is kind of the gold standard when it comes to it. Many biologists before me have been doing it, so it's great to keep doing it, keep that long data set. When you're measuring a wing, like I said, you're looking at the last primary that's growing, that's closest to the body. And the primaries are numbered, and they're numbered 1 closest to body to 10 away. And say, the last one that's growing is number 10, you'll put this against the wing and you'll measure how long it is. And that'll tell you, again, say like it'll get into the 22 box. And 22 weeks ago from when it was harvested is when it was hatched. And like I said, you can only do those on juveniles, obviously. Once they get over 22 weeks old, they're basically an adult. That's the end of their molting stage. And then to tell if it's an adult or a juvenile from a pheasant foot, you look at the length of the spur and the leg. If it's greater than a ½ inch, it's an adult. If it's less, then it's a juvenile. That's probably the biggest pheasant myth that I always get. Pheasants, especially in North Dakota, they will only have 1 hatch of chicks. Now they will re-nest if their eggs are destroyed before anything hatches. If anything hatches, that's it for the year. But say, like this year we had a lot of hailstorms and tornadoes. If that nest was destroyed by anything, they will re-nest. And they'll re-nest 3-4 times if they have to. Now, every time they do that, obviously it's a lot more energy that they've expanded, probably less of a survival that they're gonna have through the winter. And even, it's less eggs every time because they don't have the nutrients stored up anymore. And then, the later they're hatched, in North Dakota, we can have winter in, September, October. If they're not big enough to be able to thermoregulate themselves during colder weather, their survivability is a lot lower. A grouse, you need a couple of the head feathers, the wing, and then the tail feathers, the middle tail feathers, the longest ones. Male or female from the head feathers and the tail feathers. How long ago it was hatched is from the wing. Partridge is just the wing. It's very important if any part isn't put in correctly, we can't use that sample. And you know, it's real tough for me, you took the time to harvest this bird, send us the samples, and if something is wrong, you just can't use it. Now we're getting around 5,000 wing envelopes a year. Back in the day, it used to be closer to 10,000. When we harvested, say, in 2007, we had 900,000 birds that were harvested. We'd get almost 10,000. So, and hunters are the hunter numbers are declining and things like that. So obviously you would think that participation is going down, but yeah, the more samples, the better. Obviously that makes your data stronger when you have more. So what we ask for where the county where it was harvested. I don't need GPS, quarter, anything like that, and then the date it was shot. And also you mark on there which species it was. You don't have to put your name, address on there, but if you do, we'll send you a summary of the wing data after we're all done at the end of the year. What you want to see ideally is a lot of juveniles in your harvest. The last few years have kind of been outliers since we've had such good winter survival that there is a little bit more adults in your harvest. But when you have a lot of juveniles in your harvest, you're having good production, which obviously means that your population is overall better, as it would be if you're harvesting a lot of adults. Especially the last 5-6 years, partridge and grouse, they've been kind of hard to come by. Some of that's, partridge were on a dip in their population, a little bit low, but they're coming back up. But yeah, we need more people to be out there, go grouse hunting, go partridge hunting, because those were kind of lacking behind in samples. If you did a small game survey and you checked that you hunted pheasants, we'll send out a sample to the pheasant hunters. And a sample to the grouse and the partridge hunters. But also a lot of people, you can go on our website and you can request these and we'll send you out a package. And then also when you get these and you turn some in, there's a checkbox on here. If you want more, we'll keep sending them out, throughout the year. So I encourage hunters, this helps tremendously. I mean, this is the kind of data that we need to keep using, keep getting, so that we can keep the best management for our upland population. If we would lose this, it wouldn't be quite the end of the world, but it's obviously a foolproof method. You have the wing in hand. You can see for sure, knowing when your peak hatch is. And again, that's what we base all of our management on. And it's what a lot of national policies are used for. Like I said, CRP, things like that. If you don't have that, things change. And then also, losing a 60-year data set would be pretty detrimental.